For Company Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson. We all know the materialistic friend, someone who's materialistic is often too concerned with material possessions rather than intellectual or spiritual things.
Just because I have superficial values doesn't mean I'm not deep.
When it comes to sitcoms, the materialistic one usually shares judgmental, status-oriented, pampered, shallow, and snobby traits. When it comes to girlfriends, Antoinette Toni Childs is definitely that friend. In the show, Toni was a diva. She was smart, successful, insanely gorgeous, and always knew exactly what she wanted, which is some of the characteristics that we all wish we had. Like Hillary Banks from The Fresh Prince or Regine from Living Single, Toni fit the profile of the lovable snob we can't help but laugh with. But despite her being put together, many choices Toni made, in relationships especially, left us yelling at the TV screen like Tyra Banks on America's Next Top Model. We were all rooting for you! Here's why Toni Childs is the girlfriend we hate to love.
You are the bitch that I have always wanted to be.
Toni was the materialistic one. She was accustomed to the finer things in life and often chose men that could provide that. She's been called a gold digger and bougie. But what we love most about Toni is the fact that she knows exactly what she wants and doesn't shy away from it. For Toni, anything less than a life of luxury is unacceptable. She has always been interested in the latest clothes, the hottest clubs, and current trends. Toni grew up in a poor environment with an alcoholic mother, so her love of material things probably came from her lack thereof growing up. Some psychologists have determined that the things that happen in one's childhood has an effect in our adult lives. If we were given something as children, we give that same thing as adults. Similar to if we were deprived of something as children, we seek that as well when we're adults. Toni didn't have access to the name brand and high-class items as a child, which explains her desire to opulence and decadence in her adult years. Her motto is, only the best and nothing less. During the show's run, Jill embodied the essence of what it meant to be sophisticated, classy, and put together. To be blunt, Toni was a bad bee, a siren. The clothes she wore hugged all of her curves in the right places. They accentuated her features. Her nails were always manicured, and she literally never had a bad hair day. Except when she was shown waking up in the morning, but even her bedhead was still better than most. Makeup was on point. Everything about Toni was to be envied. She was a strong black lead who didn't take any crap. Some would call her a gold digger, but I say the woman had high standards.
So, you think I'm just a gold digger?
Your words, but yes.
And she wasn't going to let anyone lower them. When Toni wasn't running her mouth, her appearance via her clothes spoke volumes for her. Why did Toni Childs steal almost every scene she was a part of? What was so captivating about this character? She was witty, playful, and alluring. She seemed to have it all together, but when she opened her mouth, you never knew what was going to come out. She was both entertaining and interesting to look at. But the main thing that pulled audiences in was her ability to captivate. Toni knew how to just be. She was being her authentic self, no matter how vain, confident, or beautiful. One thing is for sure, authenticity always attracts. And Toni did that for every scene. This made her the focal point of all of the men in the room. And it's always made her stand out amongst a crowd of women. Toni kept herself up by keeping all of her beauty appointments with hair, massages, manis, and pedis. Men and women love it when a woman is put together. Toni did want a man to wait on her hand and foot and provide her with all the best things in life. But she could easily do that herself, due to the fact that she had her own successful career. The woman was a successful real estate agent who later went on to own her own brokerage. That's not a small feat, even by today's standards. seeing a strong, independent woman on screen was inspiring to me and many other young women out there. She was the definition of a hard-working Black woman who worked for everything she has. Now, we can all agree, while Toni was successful and beautiful to look at, that attitude was a little stank. Honestly, she had every reason to be. Toni always said what was on her mind and didn't even consider the fact that it might come off as rude. Toni was the unfiltered one in the group. In the beginning of the series, Toni and Maya would constantly go at it. Toni would always make snide comments, calling Maya ghetto and referring to her as low class. Toni's lifestyle is ego-driven and Maya had no problem calling her out for it. Toni often used sarcasm to put down anyone she saw beneath her, so much that she can come across as mean-spirited or condescending. A running joke in the series was Toni's self-centeredness. She never remembered the name of Maya's husband or son, Jabari.
Who's Darnell?
Maya's husband. Toni, you have met him 5 or 6 times. He's a baggage handler.
Oh, and I guess next you're gonna expect me to remember the name of the valet who parked my car.
Maya and Darnell worked it out with Jakarta.
Toni, his name is Jabari.
Toni was confident, and we all know confidence can easily be confused with arrogance. But in Toni's case, it was a little of both. Blame it on her self-indulgent attitude on life. There were moments when Toni tried to step outside of her comfort zone and even converted to Judaism to appease her soon-to-be husband. But in the end, her attitude is what broke them up. Nothing wrong with confidence, but sometimes Toni went into overdrive with this. Relationships. Because Toni was the desire of many men, she often changed men like she swiped designer bags. A lot of women in her position have a plethora of suitors, and as a result, often get caught up in the chase more than the actual relationship. She was almost too superficial. There was an episode where she refused to date a man because he was too dark, and she initially rejected Todd because of his height. Toni's love life took a lot of hits during the series' run of Girlfriends, and many fans were not in agreement of her decision to marry Todd. But it's easy for a woman as complex as Toni to be caught up in a man who loves her as much as she loves herself.
That's ridiculous. No one loves themselves more than I do.
Ironically, this was the downfall of that relationship. But it didn't stop her from trying. Throughout the series, Toni's friendship with Joan was put to the test. At the end of the first season, Joan ruins Toni's relationship with both men she's seen. When Joan finally confesses, Toni slaps Joan.
You bitch! Oh my God! Toni!
It's one of the many times the two characters call off their friendship. At the end of the 6th season, Toni goes through a custody battle with Todd. Joan misses a court hearing, which leads to the fight that ends Joan and Toni's friendship for good. In the end, Toni moved to New York but still kept in contact with Lynn and Maya. Fans of Girlfriends were heartbroken when it was announced that Jill Marie Jones decided not to renew her contract and left the show after the 6th season. There was no animosity between her and the other 3 women. Jones decided to leave to pursue other projects. As narcissistic as Toni Childs was, we couldn't help but miss her quick-witted tempo and conversations and her impeccable style sense. The snarky, shallow, snobby one-liners were no more, leaving women without someone to identify with. Yes, we love Joan, Lynn, and Maya, but Toni was the one we all wanted to be. Besides, Toni's materialistic counterparts, Hillary Banks and Regine, Toni also had similarities to another living single character, Maxine Shaw, who inspired so many Black girls to pursue a career as a lawyer. Fans never got to see the imprint of what Toni Child's character could have left on society. Toni will forever be a classy, bougie type of woman who many will hope to emulate. Stay up to date with the latest news and comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel and follow Comedy Hype across all social media. For Comedy Hype News, I'm Symphony Thompson.